Hi guys, it's Haley. So in this exciting video, we're going to talk about the astrology of the first lunation of 2024, which is going to be a new moon in the sign of Capricorn on the 11th of January. And it goes exact at 6:57 a.m. Eastern time. And as always, this first new moon is a really great time to kind of do those kind of stereotypical new year kind of things like setting intentions. The Capricorn energy really assists us in kind of determining and clarifying the direction that we want to go in and kind of identifying with kind of ambition and what we want to build in the world, and then kind of practically taking steps to create those structures in our lives that assist us and kind of create some momentum or some support so that we can practically enact those things that we desire in the new year. And so in this video, I'm just gonna, as always, kind of chat about some of the planetary aspects. And when we talk about aspects, we're talking about relationships. We're talking about geometry, we're talking about math, between the planets, kind of forming this dialogue or this conversation between different archetypal energies that are expressed in many cultures, many traditions around the world. For example, Venus, we see in the goddesses with many faces, with many names that appear in many cultures around the world. And so this kind of energy at the root of things, or this archetype, which we can experience in our personal psychologies, our personal experiences in relationships with others. We can see it in the world around us. These are kind of timeless things that are like very valuable to kind of reflect upon. And the new and the full moon, which occur 2 times, once each, we get 2 lunations every month, are really good opportunities to kind of check in and kind of, whether it's taking a step back, taking a more internal reflective place, or a more like celebratory kind of approach to looking at what has manifested in our lives, what we've worked to create, and additionally like what has been kind of, not with luck, but with kind of the grace of lots of things outside of our control occurred. So in this video, we're going to talk about this lunation, this new moon in Capricorn, and then we're also going to pull some cards from the tarot to get some additional messages to maybe clarify or deepen our understanding. And so with the new moon, the sun and the moon, both of the luminaries, are going to be at the exact same degree of the exact same sign. In this case, they're going to be at 20 degrees of the sign of Capricorn. And this lunation chart is very Capricorn heavy. And so we might kind of discuss what the archetype of Capricorn is, and that might really assist us at this time, because we have a triple Capricorn lunation. So that means the sun, the moon, and then additionally the ascendant, which is going to be the constellation that's rising over the eastern horizon at the exact time, like I said, 6:57 a.m. Eastern at the time of this lunation. So we have this big stellium, this big planetary pileup in the sign of Capricorn. So we have the degree of the ascendant. We also have Mars very close to the ascendant. We have the sun and the moon, the new moon, and then we also have Pluto, which is at the very end of the sign of Capricorn and about to transition into Aquarius for the next 20 years. And so the sign of Capricorn tells us a lot about what we strive for. And so I see with this lunation a real emphasis for an opportunity to be feeling a lot of ambition, a lot of kind of motivation, feeling very like physically strong can be a key, especially with Mars in Capricorn. Mars is very happy to be there. In the first house, feeling very physically vital could be kind of open to us. The only thing I will say is kind of being aware or mindful around like overexertion, whether that's kind of overreaching for some goal rather than kind of setting up the small kind of minute details that assist us in practically carrying those things out, or just like physically overexerting yourself could be something to watch out for. But in general, this is a really good time, to move that energy physically, maybe do a more kind of vigorous workout, which will assess or assist you in kind of having more clear thinking. As always, new moons can be kind of more of a quiet time, more of a reflective time, but I see this lunation as a real opportunity to get very clear with yourself, whether that's journaling it out. The chart ruler, Saturn and Pisces in the 3rd house, could really assist in kind of having more mystical downloads if you lean towards that, or just getting a real good insight into what's happening for you spiritually, or if you don't identify with that kind of a practice, what's happening kind of internally within your psyche, to kind of journal it out or kind of free form voice memo it, or have a good conversation with a loved one that you trust to kind of zone in or hone in on the things that are important to you. Capricorn has a lot to do with values, maybe traditional values, what we're building for the future, and kind of getting really clear on what the vision is, what the blueprint is, what the roadmap is, and how are we going to practically get from point A to point B. And so at the top of the year, just a really good time to kind of whip out a good list, or maybe create a vision board. It could be really good with the chart ruler being in Pisces, kind of going on a walk, listening to music, and then clarifying what goal it is that you would like to work towards. Let me check in with my notes. Yeah, and so we also have some very beneficial kind of planetary energy assisting in kind of putting wind in the sail, so to speak. We have Mars and Jupiter both forming sextiles, which are 60-degree angles to the chart ruler Saturn, which can kind of add this kind of like general feeling of vigor and optimism and self-belief and confidence that we can kind of work towards our dreams, which can be a very kind of like subjectively experienced as positive feeling of feeling very capable, feeling self-sufficient, feeling kind of empowered to make changes in our lives. But with Capricorn, it can be very like the seed that's planted has longevity to it. We want to make sure that kind of the dream kind of has legs, so to speak, that it is something that we can practically see ourselves working towards over time. It's not sort of like a fleeting thing. We can kind of come back to the core of like what's important, and then how do we want to act from there. This is kind of a small thing, but yeah, just making sure that there is the potential with the lunation squaring the asteroid Chiron, the wounded healer, as well as the North Node, that maybe there's some sort of tension within the family specifically. Maybe kind of with Capricorn in this first house stellium, kind of having this very kind of self-centric view of where we're going, we can kind of forget to check in around like, oh, the people that we cohabitate with. Extended family too can be in the fourth house. Ancestry, how do we want to do things differently, that's a big important thing. Kind of maybe an opportunity to kind of reflect on where we come from and what are the kind of conditioned responses. And with Capricorn, it's really important to check in around what success is, and maybe how you define success and how that may be different from the people that raised you. And because if the goal kind of from the beginning was using a set of criteria that don't actually matter to you, and that you're using those criteria to assess whether you were successful or not, that might be important to kind of modify or check in with some of that kind of ancestral family related stuff. Okay, so we're gonna start shuffling the tarot. Yeah, Nick, it's a very interesting paradox because it's like a very energetic, energized lunation, but it is still at new moon, which is, we don't see, it's a dark moon. There is no light visible to us from Earth. So it can be kind of a more gestational, less external evidence of things happening, whereas, you know, the cliche of the full moon is things are very dramatic and externally evident. So it's very interesting. So what are some of the messages for us as a collective as we navigate this Capricorn new moon? Thank you. I think we'll get 3 cards. How can we navigate this lunation? Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value too with putting kind of weaving this energy together. Having a Capricorn new moon in the first house, it might be kind of valuable to kind of keep these emerging dreams kind of closer to your chest, to your heart, and not necessarily having to immediately share them with everyone around you. With both of 2 out of 3 of the personal planets, we have Venus and Mercury. Let me get a drink of water. In Sagittarius in the 12th house. So kind of speaking out of our mouths potentially. And the reason I say this is I pulled the Ace of Swords in reverse. And so kind of taking pressure off for things to be super clear. And maybe with Capricorn energy, it's more of just you see a vision or of the feeling that you want to experience, because a lot of people talk about how when we're thinking about what we want to manifest, whether it's this career or this house, a lot of times it is the core feeling that we're kind of chasing and then pinning to all of these external things. And so while we might feel really motivated to get everything in order, there might be some cautionary or just like take it a little bit slower, because there is a lot of like internally focused energy with the Hermit. We have the Magician in reverse, a lot of these major arcana cards. We also have the Death card coming up, which a lot of people look at this imagery and they get scared. But this is not, to fearmonger. Death can occur in a myriad of ways in the tarot. Sometimes when death is paired with, like, say, the Justice card, it kind of signifies more of a divorce or a relational unraveling of some sort. But with the Death card, I think this really speaks to what I was saying around the square to Chiron, as well as the North Node, in terms of kind of where we want to go and kind of setting the compass has some sort of like recalibration is necessary, if that makes sense. And so maybe letting go of some of that old dream, so we can kind of start with a clean slate and kind of and that clean slate kind of comes from checking in with kind of the debris that we've carried or picked up from other people. Yeah, kind of like the death of a dream in a way, kind of with the, again, kind of a scary imagery card for some people, but it's not scary. The Ten of Swords in reverse. So letting go of what we think we want and kind of allowing that kind of still reflective place to kind of allow something to emerge. Because if we don't know what we want, but we kind of are telling ourselves that we know what we want, that can create a lot of confusion internally and then also in relationships, when it kind of creates this like defensive need to kind of always be on guard around, but to just kind of sit in the unknown of kind of having a true north, but also being kind of open to the form that it might ultimately arrive in. Okay, so I'm gonna pull an animal spirit card as well. Spirit, what is the animal spirit that is guiding us as we navigate this lunation, this Capricorn New Moon? Okay. Yeah, a time of a lot of transition with the butterfly, specifically having to do with like relationships, matters of the heart. And I see the potential for this lunation for definitely a lot of people to be ready to make relational commitments, whether like people are getting engaged, solidifying, or kind of articulating the state of relationships. So a lot of transition. So kind of sometimes that transition is easier to undergo when you're in kind of like a more quiet, insular place rather than like really externally facing, and the process is kind of being watched in a lot of ways, very publicly. Yeah, so a real closing of a cycle in a lot of ways, and I really see this with Capricorn at the anaretic, the last degree. It's at 29 degrees of Capricorn, with the closing of a lot of cycles. So maybe the way that you kind of clarify or redirect the purpose that you're moving is by letting go of what you don't want, which is really critical, again, what I said, for having that blank slate, that clear foundation before we build on top of the things that have been in our lives. Yeah, the necessity of clearing out to make room for the otter. So a lot more joy, a lot more play. It's kind of that trope with Capricorn sometimes around like working so hard and climbing this ladder or this mountain, and then ultimately looking around and being alone and being like, wow, are my goals setting me up for feeling lonely, for feeling ultimately not the things that I truly value, such as family or whatever those things may be. Having just more of a playful attitude or approach can really help, because Capricorn energy can come across very harsh, very serious. It can take itself very seriously. And so kind of challenging yourself to kind of tap into all this mutable energy and maybe be around kids, just play a game, do a puzzle, I don't know, something to kind of take the heat off so that you can really get in touch with your kind of unadulterated visions or dreams. So I think I'm gonna read the card. I also pulled the Fox upright. And then we'll kind of wrap this video up by giving some summaries. Okay, so the Fox card also speaks a lot to relationships and connection. And with Capricorn, it can be like very like a tendency towards like monogamy, but the new moon is also trining Uranus, so kind of updating what's old. Uranus in relationships often shows up as like non-monogamy or polyamory or things in that realm, and so kind of the need to kind of keep things kind of flexible. Not necessarily if you're in a monogamous relationship, it's time to open it up, but what is the things that are stale and the things that are outdated might become more clear around the time of this lunation, and the need to kind of continue this kind of like process of, if you are in a monogamous relationship, kind of seeing the person as always having the opportunity to like learn something new about them, and just kind of this like playful, very intelligent energy of the Fox. So I'm gonna wrap this up because this video is getting really long. But ultimately this Capricorn new moon I think is really beautiful in terms of opening up the new year, in terms of allowing us to kind of see that vista, that horizon of possibility. Even if we feel kind of trapped or encumbered or unable to manifest the dream, there is a lot of momentum, there is a lot of confidence to enact things, kind of act on our will, to make our will physical in the world around us. But ultimately, again, it's a new moon and we have some planets in the 12th house, so the importance of seeking solitude with the Hermit in any small way, without necessarily withdrawing or isolating or becoming really serious or building these walls of protection, keeping things playful, and then being willing to let some things go. So thanks for checking in, guys. Feel free to comment anything at all, truly. The comments below around your experience. And yeah, have a beautiful day.